So you have been thinking of moving to Cambridge, Ontario, and you're wondering what are some of the neighborhoods that you should avoid when moving to Cambridge? Then do stick around because in this video, I'll walk you through some of the neighborhoods in Cambridge that you should avoid if you can when moving to Cambridge. Now, neighborhood is a subjective topic, but in this video, we'll try to remain objective. I'll share some data and we'll look at things such as crime rate, overall safety of the neighborhood, income levels, as well as the unemployment rates, as well as we'll look at the what we call pride of ownership that runs pretty much in any neighborhood that determines the ratio of owners versus tenant occupied homes. All these factors do actually make any neighborhood good or not so good. So we're going to look at all those things as we dive into this video. So stick around as we get right into it. Hello and welcome. If this is your first time to this channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Kitchener, Cambridge and Waterloo, then subscribe below and tap on the bell for notification so you can be the first to learn about the current market in and around Kitchener. My name is Dharmik Dixit. I'm a local real estate agent serving Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo and surrounding areas. I do get calls, texts, emails from people just like you who are looking for help in making that move to Kitchener and surrounding towns, and I absolutely love it. So whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 9 days, be sure to reach out. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, or you can even schedule a Zoom call. All the info right below in the description. I'll be more than happy to help you guys make a smooth move to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, and surrounding areas. All right, so the first up I have downtown Cambridge here, and this is basically the neighborhood located at the core of the city. And I've actually pulled up some data that I'll share with you to help you understand why this may not be a desirable neighborhood for many. If I had to look at the overall safety and the crime index for this neighborhood, on an average, the number of reported crimes is 35% higher than that of the city average for Cambridge. If I had to look at further the household income, you're looking at about 48,000 average median household income for this neighborhood versus Cambridge average being close to $88,000. So there's a material difference in the income levels between the two, as you can see. Further to add to that, if you were to look at the real estate price points, average price point for downtown Cambridge is just around 400,000 versus that of the city average being well over 500,000. So again, there is 100,000 difference between this particular neighborhood and that for the city average for Cambridge. Now, obviously, if you are an investor or looking to rent it out or trying to find a good entry point, this may not be a bad option, but just be cognizant of these facts and some of the data that I've shared here. And the pride of ownership is another factor we look at to kind of determine the quality of the neighborhood. Downtown Cambridge is the neighborhood where you have about 40% owner-occupied homes versus 60% rented homes. So that does speak to the pride of ownership, which is not very strong in this particular neighborhood. And obviously it does speak to the quality of this particular neighborhood. Next up, I do have Alison, and this is basically the neighborhood located on southeastern end of Cambridge. If you were to go from north to south, you'll definitely find Alison next to East Galt. And this is the neighborhood, again, is notorious with its crime numbers. We're looking about 30% higher crime rate, number of reported crime incidents compared to that of the city average for Cambridge. If I were to look at the household income, slightly better than that of downtown Cambridge at close to $53,000. Now keep in mind, this is the household income, not the individual income, versus that of the city average for Cambridge being $88,000. So still there is a material gap between the two. To add to that further, about average price point for a real estate in this neighborhood is again much better than that of the city average, being at around $446,000 versus for the rest of Cambridge, as we noted earlier, is just around $510,000. What you will find in some of this neighborhood that I mentioned here is a lot of dated old real estate. So you will not find a lot of newer development happening in some of these neighborhoods. So that's basically where you see that homes being built into 60s, 70s, all the way to 90s, and maybe some early 2000s, but not a lot of development, especially if you're looking for like a newer construction that's not been built prior to the last 20 to 25 years. These neighborhoods will anyways be out of your radar. But hey, if you are in fact an investor or looking for a good entry point to rent out an investment property, I can tell you these neighborhoods will give you decent entry points while possibly leading to a cash flow positive situation for you as a landlord. And lastly, if I were to talk about the pride of ownership in Alison, again, it's very similar to that of downtown Cambridge, whereby 40% of the homes are owner occupied and close to 60% of the homes here in this neighborhood are that of rented out. So that does obviously speak to the pride of ownership and the overall quality of this neighborhood. Now again, keep in mind the numbers and the data that I'm sharing here. I've included the link below in the description so you can dive further in about some of this neighborhood I mentioned here, or any other neighborhood that might be on your radar and you want to learn more about it. But always take these numbers and the data with a grain of salt. What's always advisable is to work with the local professionals so they can guide you about the good and the bad neighborhoods in that particular town. And furthermore, if you have the ability to do so, I would say maybe drive around in the neighborhood and around the neighborhood, maybe grab a coffee at a local coffee shop, spend a few hours, maybe speak to some locals there to get the vibe of the neighborhood. Because after all, you're making arguably one of the biggest purchases of your life. So you want to make sure that you do invest the time and energy to make that right choice for yourself and your family. Right, so next up I have Preston Heights, and this is the neighborhood that's more like a central location in Cambridge. If you were to go from north to south on Cambridge, Preston Heights will be that central location where you're very close to 401. There are some good sides of this neighborhood. You're very close to 401, almost immediate access. You're very close to Kitchener, where King Street is connecting Cambridge and Kitchener. But at the same time, Preston Heights as a neighborhood is very close to Conestoga College, and that's why you will find a lot of students in this neighborhood. So if you're rather an investor looking to rent it out to a group of students, I mean, you can't go wrong, because you will get a really good entry point in Preston Heights, and you'll find a bunch of students wanting to rent a place from you, because it's probably just one bus from most part of this neighborhood. What you will find in this neighborhood, if you were to drive around, is majority of the neighborhood is built around 60s to all the way to 90s. You will find a lot of those smaller homes located on a very small lot, somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 square feet, mostly like, detached homes, but they're very small in size, both the living space and the lot size. And like I said, a lot of older construction. There is a patch in this neighborhood that's built recently. So there is some new development that has happened in the last, I would say decade or two. But still, to date, overall, if I had to look at some numbers, diving into which, let's say the average crime rate in this neighborhood is about 30% higher than that of the city average for Cambridge. If I had to look at the income levels, still in Preston Heights, average household income around 66K versus that of 88, or well, close to 90,000 for the rest of Cambridge. And in fact, of the home prices is where it gets really sweet for you guys, is average home price here in this neighborhood, as reported recently, is around $362,000, which is pretty low compared to that of the Cambridge average of $510,000. So you're getting a really good real estate deals, but you will have to compromise a lot in terms of the age and the space and the lot size and a lot of other things about the neighborhood that I mentioned earlier. Now, owner versus renter occupied ratios in this neighborhood is running somewhere close to 64 to 36, whereby close to 64% homes are owner occupied and about 36% of the homes are that of rented out. So obviously it's getting better. That pride of ownership, like this neighborhood, is still not as bad as some of the couple other neighborhoods I mentioned earlier. But just, I would say, maybe drive around this neighborhood and spend some time to get the vibe of this neighborhood before you make a call to move to this neighborhood. And the next one on my list here is the neighborhood that's located more so southern end of Cambridge, and we are looking at East Galt. And this is again, something a bit tricky to determine the overall quality of the neighborhood. But there are some pockets in East Galt which are pretty notorious. And if I had to look at the crime rate, on an average, still about 25% higher than that of the city average. Household income still far lower than that of city average. Average household income in East Galt is around 65,000 versus that of 90,000 for the rest of Cambridge. As you can see, there is still that material difference in that household income gap between this neighborhood and that of the city average. If I have to look at the real estate price point, again, you're looking about $419,000 for an average home in this neighborhood versus that of $510,000 for the average home in Cambridge. So again, still that significant difference in the real estate price points. And the owner to renter ratio in this neighborhood is still around 60 to 40, where 60% of the homes are owner occupied, whereby 40% of the homes are rented out. So you will find a good mix of owners and the renters living in this neighborhood. And the last one on my list is the Greenway Chaplin. You're looking at just south of Preston. This pocket of Cambridge is very similar to that of East Galt that I mentioned earlier. It's not that bad compared to some of the other neighborhoods we looked at earlier, but you're still looking at a crime rate about 20% higher than that of the city average. And if I had to look at the household income, average household income being around $75,000 in this neighborhood versus that of Cambridge being $88,000. So as you can see, we are approaching close to that city average for the average household income. And further to add to that, average real estate price point in this neighborhood is just shy of $390,000 versus that of $510,000 in the rest of Cambridge. So these are really some good entry points if you were to be an investor wanting to rent out. Again, Greenway Chaplin will give you a handful of renters, as the owner versus renter ratio in this neighborhood runs around 60 to 40%, whereby 60% of the homes are owner occupied while 40% of them are being rented out. Now, these are some of the very few neighborhoods in Cambridge that you should avoid if you're able to, simply for the fact that there are so many better options available for you and your family here in Cambridge. Having said that, that's where it becomes so much important for you to work with a local real estate professional who knows the neighborhood, who can understand your needs for you and your family, and help you find the neighborhood that's the right fit for you guys. Nonetheless, you can always take a drive around the neighborhood, as I stated earlier, to get the vibe of the neighborhood, because I can tell you that will tell you a lot about this neighborhood that's on your radar to help you understand whether that's the one for you or not. Having said that, I hope you did get some value or some perspective about these neighborhoods and why they may not be a best fit for you. Once again, whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 9 days, be sure to reach out. All the info right below in the description. I'll be more than happy to help you make a smooth move to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, and surrounding towns. Until next time, well, I do hope to show you around town.